Hi, everybody. It's Susan again. This time we're having a look at the Libra full moon coming up on the 6th of April. That's universal time. So that's for most of the world, as it's at 5:34 universal time. If you are in the Pacific time zone or Hawaiian time zone, that will be on the 5th in the evening. But for most of us, it's on the 6th. And it's easy to forget about this full moon, as important as it is, because in fact, we are so inundated with all of the changes that have happened in March with the big sign changes of Saturn going into Pisces, Pluto going into Aquarius, and Mars going into Cancer, among other things. And of course, then upcoming, we've got the solar eclipse coming up on the 20th in the sign of Aries, and that I will definitely do a video on very soon. Very crucial month, April, very intense month again. And I think we'll be looking back on this energy of March and April of 2023 in history. I think we'll be looking back at this point in time as something quite historic, quite important in our social world, in our society at large, but also I think in our individual lives. Lots of things changing here. So the way I see this full moon is as a need for finding balance. Obviously, this is anyway one of the themes that automatically comes up when we have Aries and Libra together. It's about finding the balance between our individual need, our individual desires, or perhaps our selfishness to a certain extent, and I think even today we could say to a great extent, and to our sense of what is fair and just and what is harmonious within relationships of all kinds. That moon over there in Libra is in a nakshatra called Hasta, and Hasta literally means hand. Kar, by the way, also means hand, and that's where we also get the root for karma. And so our actions come from the hands, what we do, and that creates a result, it creates an effect. With the moon in Hasta, we can get really good results. It can be super harmonious in terms of a desire for cooperation, a desire for something new and inspired to come in. And I do think we urgently need this. We can get more awareness of what we need to get what we want. And the sense of not being inspired or the sense of not finding that deeper motivation to achieve what we want can make us feel hopeless. And so for me, I think this, let's call it the energy of Hasta Nakshatra, and also the energy of the Venus ruled Libra moon here, is very much about finding hope. It's about maintaining hope in a really, really challenging situation. We might find that individually that we're extremely challenged, and especially, of course, collectively, we're extremely challenged. As a little aside as well, just keeping in mind that that balance between Aries and Libra is about finding harmony in differing viewpoints, understanding that our particular worldview is not always the right one, and certainly it's not the only one, and that we need to reflect on other people's viewpoints. And maybe I'll just make an aside here for our American friends that this dichotomy between Democrat and Republican, I don't buy into. I am neither. I don't get into your politics. I'm not interested in all of that stuff. The fact that I speak English with a North American accent does not mean that I have to take sides in this race and this craziness. I would almost say that at this point, if you actually still believe that there's a distinction between Democrat and Republican, you really haven't been paying attention. So, not to be insulting, I don't mean that at all. I just mean that you really haven't been paying attention. And so these are the kinds of things we need to stop and question. To what extent am I pushing my view? That Aries, which can be inspiring, by the way, it can be very super inspiring and motivating, but it can also be just this drive to like get my way. Um, Now, with this full moon opposition, the moon in Libra is saying, slow down and let's think about other people. Let's think about other opinions and other needs. What is fair? What is just? This is Libra. What is harmonious? What's beautiful? This is distinctly Libra. And so we mustn't lose hope. Keep that in mind. This is the only way that we can find solutions. And once we've lost hope, we degenerate into anger and we degenerate into this kind of savage energy, which is just destructive on all levels, and most especially self-destructive. So that facing challenges aspect of the intense Aries energy that we have requires that sense of, why am I doing this? Why do I keep hope? Why am I motivated for this? So keep coming back to yourself. Find, what is my core motivation? Am I motivated by hate and anger and violence, even fury and rage, which is very much this energy of the intensity of Aries that we've had recently? Or is it actually motivated by a desire to find connection and harmony? And that's the Libra energy. So we know that a lot of these challenges that we're facing are due to the incompetence of our leaders, the psychopathic people who are in charge, and that is not with any one particular country in mind. I honestly cannot think of a country, and I'm extremely tuned into geopolitical events. I cannot think of a country that is not ruled by a psychopathic bunch of leaders. Um, I was just reading earlier the Corbett report, which I highly recommend for people to read. I'll post it down below. And this is about how psychologists and psychiatrists throughout decades have been pointing out the higher than average number of psychopaths amongst the ruling classes. And this is very important to understand, because we might have this idea that people think rationally, that they think compassionately, that our leaders are actually just like us, and they're not. They're not. So to be able to succeed in a political environment or in a business environment, in an environment where you're striving at all times to be first, to be number one, to be successful, to be wealthy and self-serving and self-dealing, that requires a level of psychopathy that is abnormal, that is destructive. And yet we still hold them to the same expectations as we would our next door neighbor. Maybe your next door neighbor is a psychopath, I don't know. But the point being that we're not necessarily seeing clearly what's going on here. And once we understand this, I think that's when we can start to pull in this Chiron in a group way, in a social way, in a collective way, where we see that Chiron on the sun. We can really start to recognize that there's a need, a really deep need, to understand what is the sabotage, what is the required healing here, what is this big wound that we have around our leadership, because the sun in Aries is also leaders. It's not just sun in Leo, that's also, of course, leaders, that's kings and rulers of all kinds. But sun in Aries just represents leadership. It represents a certain amount of individuation and a desire to be first, to be ruling the pack, as it were, which in its highest manifestation can be really helpful. And of course, in its lowest manifestation, like we're seeing all over the world, it is very, very destructive. And so we want to understand where we sit with that personally, where our selfishness might require some kind of understanding or some kind of healing or some kind of awareness around perhaps also our lack of self-esteem, our lack of sufficiency, our lack of individuation. And Chiron is pulling that in. That Chiron on the sun, especially in Aries, is really triggering issues around lacking confidence. Now, I would call this lack of confidence in our leaders overall. Remember the moon over here. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. And certainly on a communal level, on a lower level, in terms of your everyday life, we must keep that hope alive. I think this is what Pluto is bringing in here, a capacity for us to transform our connections socially, and where we connect with people through different groups, and how that looks. It's going to be very different. Again, not necessarily easy, but it's got to be done. And this Chiron with the sun in Aries, it's showing us there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of healing necessary here. That Chiron and Sun conjunction is also in a relatively close semi-sextile to Uranus. So there's a real urgency here, a feeling of itchiness and frustration. That Uranus, of course, having been in Taurus since 2018, is all about churning up what we value, turning up markets of all kinds, how we nourish ourselves, how we take care of ourselves financially. What is the nest egg? That's been radically transformed. That sense of security has been radically transformed since May of 2018. And then if we also notice here what's going on, then there's, of course, a relatively close conjunction. So within just over 4 degrees, a conjunction of Jupiter with the sun that's expanding this idea of what is important to us, how we need to act, perhaps in our own best interests on an individual level, but also how we need to observe our rulers and how the rulers may be overreaching. This is again Jupiter on the sun can be overreach if we're looking at this from the point of view of the leaders that we've got to deal with here. That also is in opposition, that Jupiter is in a broad opposition to the moon. Yeah, the Jupiter moon opposition can be really, it can be self-indulgent. It's not really, it's like looking for what's right for me. It can be, taking the easy way out. When we're talking about harmony and relationships and so on, self-indulgence doesn't really work. That energy of self-indulgence backfires sooner or later. You can't keep that up. Um, so just keep these things in mind on an individual level. And of course, I'll go sign by sign, so you'll see where this is all happening for you. This is extremely important already if you're Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or if you have a stellium in Aries. And certainly anything in between, let's say, 13 and 18, maybe 19 degrees of Aries. We can extend that to 21, 22 of Aries if we're looking at Jupiter. And of course, if you've got anything between, say, 13 and, I don't know, 19 degrees of Libra as well. So that you would have to see in your natal chart. I also want to point out that we've got the the North Node conjunct Mercury at this time, and Mercury is now ruled by Venus, which is still in Taurus. And Mercury in Taurus is also very much to do with our money, our exchanges, how we exchange money. So Mercury, ultimately the planet of commerce, but of course communication as well. And so Mercury in Taurus is also looking for harmony because of that Venus connection, which harkens back to that moon. This moon is ruled by that Venus in Taurus, which is a very strong Venus, which is what gives me this confidence to say we can still find hope. Don't be hopeless. Don't find that this is it. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to kind of dig in and keep looking for that hope, and looking for that sense of, okay, this is difficult and I can still continue and I still have faith that we can find connection, we can find justice, we can find fairness, even if it's in a smaller little corner of the world. And so here we have that Mercury on the North Node, and so there's quite a lot going on around commerce. I don't need to tell you that the news is exploding with that. This, of course, being on the 6th of April. So I'm now here on the 27th of March talking about this, but it's already been 10 days or more. It's been 2 weeks really, where we've had just an intense energy around banking, around finance, and so on. Mercury was still in Aries at that time. And now we have this explosive Mercury just about to approach an exact conjunction with the North Node. That's not always easy to handle because it's a lot. The North Node expands everything. This is why it's considered to be unfavorable. It's very grasping. It can be very favorable if you're looking for material success. So this can actually work for you if you're looking for some kind of financial or material success in the chaos of what we're experiencing here. But the Mercury on the North Node can just be a lot of conversation, a lot of noise, a lot of communication that is difficult to filter through. Now, the challenge here is that we have Saturn, which is in a sextile to that Mercury, which in principle can be a good way of kind of toning that down and getting that Mercury to focus a little bit. Can be really, really good for thinking things through. But let's have a look at the chart formation here. We've got a kite. And a kite formation is a grand trine plus two sextiles plus an opposition. And so the resolution of the kite, because this is a lot of flowing energy. Flowing doesn't necessarily mean favorable because it depends on what's flowing. If you've got a river of sewage, that's also flowing, but it's not necessarily favorable. And so here we have a kite manifesting itself with what are traditionally considered malefic planets. So we've got the South Node, Saturn, and Mars in this trine. And then we've got the peak of the apex of that kite, which is Rahu, which is the North Node. And so that conjunction between Mercury Rahu is the solution that the apex is the solution to the kite. It's what it is that will allow the kite to work efficiently, to bring the better results, let's say, so that it's not going to just drift off into, in this case, something more chaotic because of that malefic impulse, which can be deeply emotional. With Mars now just into Cancer, can be, um, Cancer can be. Rather, Mars in Cancer can be even vengeful. It can be like super nationalistic. I mentioned this in the Mars and Cancer video, where it can be about defending the flag, defending the nation, because we get so attached to this notion of family. The idea of something I belong to, almost obsessively, being super defensive or protective around that. And so, we're seeing this a lot around the world. And then, of course, this Saturn Mars can be on an individual level, can be a great source of willpower, can be a great source of drive, real stick to itiveness, a real emphasis on, getting through. What are we getting through? We're getting through something that's a bit muddy because it's here in the water signs. It's also something that we're here in the South Node meant to let go of. It's something that we're meant to be releasing. Now, that's Scorpio. That's an old hidden tendency on a collective level, especially towards secretism and secrets, and not divulging things that are, or maybe the need to divulge things that are hidden and a little bit underhanded. This can also be deeper psychological issues or deeper issues of, emotional impacts, emotional, potentially ranging from trauma to just not realizing how angry I have been, and now we realize that on an individual level, but of course collectively as well. But I see all of this triad here as releasing something there, again letting that flow in a way that's not going to be easy. And so here we have the solution to that, the North Node and Mercury that I just alluded to. So there's a need, again, another way of looking at that is a totally new way of communicating around issues, a totally new way of doing money, totally new way of engaging in commercial networks of all kinds, because Mercury represents exchanges, whether that be stock exchanges or market exchanges, financial exchanges, and so on, and of course exchanges of words, exchanges of thoughts and ideas. That's potentially the internet as well. That Mercury Rahu is very much about science and the next thing. What's the next thing? Future. So that emphasizes it's also this impact of Pluto in Aquarius. So that I won't get too deep into the Pluto in Aquarius, except to say that Pluto is very soon going to be squaring the nodes. So that's something I will be picking up on, and so certainly by the second half of April and for many months in 2023, Pluto is squaring the nodes. So this becomes quite urgent. It's something I'll pick up on when we talk about the eclipse coming up on the 20th. Um, I'll just have a look at my notes to see if I'm missing something. Yeah, I wanted to say more about the this Aries energy. The sun is, of course, in Aries, and it can be very inspiring, very impulsive, and so on. But the Chiron is not only about this pain of disappointment. That can be disappointment in the house where we find Aries in our own life, disappointment at where we are in that particular area of life, disappointment at how things are showing up in some way. Now, we've just had the Sun and Chiron meeting up only days before, a couple of days before this. So, in fact, you already got that message. So, let's say between probably the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of April, you'll get that feeling very strongly what I'm talking about here on the personal level, what it is that I need to change, how I need to perhaps realize where I'm holding myself back, or what kind of individuation, what kind of wounding am I dealing with here? Am I as individuated as I would like to believe, or am I still falling into this pattern of I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and I'm going to slam anybody who seems not to have the same opinions, just to give that trope again, because I get it sometimes in the comments, which amazes me. As people are like, that just sounds like somebody just mentioned something that sounds like Trump. I don't even know what it is. I had to look it up. But it's like, seriously, you have to get used to now not necessarily sharing the same opinions as everybody around you, because it's not healthy. That's groupthink. We don't want this anymore. This is Pluto going through Aquarius. The downside of that is groupthink. You're going to fall into a deep dark hole if you go down that way. Now we want this individuation, this Aries sun, individuation. Think for yourself. But at the same time, the moon across the way there in Libra is saying, think for yourself and remember that you're in a community. Remember that you're in a marriage. Remember that you're in a business partnership. Remember that there are social laws. There are rules that function to keep society harmonious. Don't be selfish. So thinking in an individuated way does not mean being selfish. That's a very different aspect of what I'm talking about here. It's about a spiritual way of looking at yourself. It's about recognizing I don't need to follow the social structures that everybody follows. And yet, I also need to live with other people. Even when we think we're not living with other people, we're absolutely affected by other people. It's just not possible. This is the way life is. It's 100% interconnected, and that's not a new age idea. That's literal. That's the truth of life itself with a capital T. So as our leaders are disappointing us, that Chiron again on the Sun in Aries, leaders disappointing us, showing us their own patterns. Again, that pathological psychopathy. We're now starting to recognize. Okay, now we need to heal this. We need to call them to task for not doing what they should, and that's that moon. That's that moon in Libra saying, "Wait a minute. What about fairness? What about diplomacy?" Um, some of you might be aware of Code Pink, and this woman is just an absolute gem. Medea Benjamin, I think is her actual name. She's an absolute gem. She's in her late 60s, early 70s, and she will show up 100% to defend peace any time there's a chance. She recently showed up and said to Blinken, Anthony Blinken, who's supposed to be the head diplomat for the United States, why aren't you doing your job? You're a diplomat. Work with diplomacy. Like war is not the solution. Work with diplomacy. The Americans have rejected any attempt at discussing peace in Ukraine, and the rest of us are paying a price for this again psychopathic behavior. It's not in the interest of the United States. It's certainly not in the interest of the U.S. Populace, and is absolutely not in the interests of Europe or the rest of the world. So look up Medea Benjamin if you don't know her. She goes by the name Code Pink. An extraordinary example of this Aries. I should look for her chart. If any of you know her date of birth, let me know. I'd love to know that. Let me know in the comments. And she is a brilliant example of this energy of what is righteous in an Aries sun. It's this warrior energy. It's a warriorship on behalf of something that is fair and just, especially with this balance with the full moon there in Libra. Yeah, and just also to point out that a lot of the challenges that we're facing currently, overall is because we do have some very, very powerful planets that are like, for example, the sun, which is really, really powerful in Aries. It's at its best in Aries. It's considered to be exalted, which are also conflated with, for example, Saturn in Pisces, which doesn't bring out the best of Saturn. I said to a client recently who asked me how to describe Saturn in Pisces, and I said, it's quite like having, when you have Saturn in Pisces natally, like I do, and like many of you do probably, it's like the realization, like, the truth of life itself, with the capital T kind of truth of what life is all about. It's our interconnectedness. It's not about money. It's not about success. It's not about being right. It's not about winning wars and all of this kind of dualistic way of looking at things. But Pisces is about consciousness. It's about all of the things that we do not see. They're not visible to us, but they're the glue that holds everything together. And with that Saturn in Pisces, we know this. We know it absolutely. And yet Saturn manifesting in the real world with time and space constrictions needs stuff to show up and to be done in the real world. And in Pisces, it's just like, wait a minute, none of what I know to be true is manifesting in the world, and it hurts. And this is why Saturn in Pisces feels so hard. It's also mutable, so Saturn doesn't work so well in mutable energy because Saturn wants something real, tangible, solid, permanent, lasting. And Saturn in Pisces can be, it can feel temporary and a bit wobbly. And if you look at that message between the fixity, this fixed sign of Aquarius, where we've just had Saturn, and even before that, the energy of Saturn ruled Capricorns over 6 years, we've had this really strong Saturn energy, but particularly coming from the fixed energy. The mutable energy that follows is kind of like a digestion phase. It's where you're trying to integrate what just happened, the fixity of the 3 years that we've just experienced globally, which have been incredibly constricting, incredibly challenging on so many fronts. And Saturn going through Pisces is kind of going, huh? What's real? What is real? What is not real? Combine that with Neptune, which is in Pisces since 2011. And it's like, I really don't know what's real. Just wait until the end of this transit in 2.5 years' time when Saturn meets Neptune. It's going to be quite a blast to try and figure out what's actually going on. But having that sense of, I don't know how to live in this world. I don't understand how to live in this world because we're coming from something so solid and everything was fixed and told, and we could touch it, we could feel it, we saw it. It was what was real. And Pisces is like, what are we going to do with that? How do we live through this? How do we combine this sense of knowing the everything behind the eyes, everything that is invisible yet so vital, the thing that underscores all of life itself, and do something with that? How can we materialize this ideal? That's the challenge. And then it'll take that length of time while Saturn is going through this mutable energy of Pisces until Saturn reaches Aries, which is initially in the end of 2025 and then finally in February 2026, which is incidentally when it also meets up with Neptune twice. um, that's when we're going to get the proverbial caca hitting the fan, because that Saturn is now going to do something new and real. And the confusion that we are experiencing now, particularly collectively, will not necessarily help us as we go forward into something that is about to regenerate. So what we have to, at least personally, be really clear: what are the foundations I'm building on over the next 2 or 2.5 years, 3 years, that I want to then initiate something new on, because that cardinal Aries energy, when Saturn goes in there, is going to build something new. That's always the pattern between fixed and mutable and cardinal, regardless of the sign. We'll have the same thing, for example, with Uranus. We've got Uranus in Taurus, a fixed sign, then it goes into Gemini. That's also when the caca is going to hit the fan, especially because that always triggers the US seventh house where Mars is, and Uranus itself is always violent, always war, involving some kind of conflict in the US chart. We'll see that in 2025. We're starting to see the signs of that already. And then the mutability of Cancer, licking the wounds after all of that, trying to figure that out. Um, so sorry, the cardinal energy of Cancer, trying to figure all of that out after we figured how to deal with the shift, the new energy, and then licking the wounds and moving on in the cardinality of Cancer. So this is the progression for Uranus, and you can find that progression everywhere we go in the chart. You can maybe see that coming up in your own life, how your chart is progressing in that way. You can find those stories in your own life. All right, I'm rambling a little bit here. I just wanted to pick up on this full moon because it is important. After the full moon, just to finish up here, we do have a couple of really nice days, let's say 1 week, maybe 12, 13 days, we could say. Maybe no, I'm not going to stretch it to 2 weeks. Let's say 10 days after this full moon. We do have some lovely things going on, because we do have Jupiter, or rather the sun catching up with Jupiter. So Jupiter will be in the heart of the sun, and that's particularly right around the 9th, 10th, 11th of April. Those are lovely days, very pleasant. But again, Jupiter, Sun, especially in the world that we're in, with if we're looking at this pattern of the full moon, I think has a lot to do with our leadership, our world leaders. Obviously, it's going to entail something to do with what we're doing around banking and so on, because that that Mercury North Node is also just before this Jupiter Sun conjunction is also going to perfect. Venus will then just slowly move in to Gemini. Venus moves into Gemini on, on the 10th. Yeah, so it's actually going to be simultaneous to that. So as Venus moves into Gemini, she loses dignity. She's no longer in the same strength. And then Venus in Gemini again is going to be in a very strong representation around commerce. So it's a big story this spring. I'm not a financial astrologer. I just know a little bit about these things, so I don't even dare make a forecast, but I can just see that it's not looking good. Jupiter is, benefic in the sense that it will, again, and especially on an individual level, can bring some really good results. Jupiter in Aries, though, is very impulsive, very dynamic, and again ruled by Mars. And this Mars at the moment is not in great dignity. Mars in Cancer doesn't really bring super results, so it can be selfish. Again, with that sense of defensiveness or a sense of being vengeful. Mars ruled Aries is, of course, always going to have some kind of connotation around war, some kind of militarism. So we do want to know what the shape of Mars is, as long as there's a lot going on in Aries. Um, so yeah, so catch a few days there in the middle of April. Catch your breath before we come up on this eclipse season. The eclipses are on the 20th of April Universal Time and also on the 5th of May. I'm going to do separate videos on those because they do have very different impacts, and I will certainly touch on world events as well in that. So there we are. I just wanted to give you the overview of all of that, and I will now go towards the sign by sign impact, which will be much more conducive to success, by the way. Always with the more general look, it's difficult to see real benefit when we're talking about a collective impact, because typically with mundane astrology, we do have to read the planets differently. We read the indications differently. We do not have the same degree of autonomy that we think we have as individuals. So let's have a look sign by sign.
For Aries, ascendant, sun, and moon, this Libra full moon is happening in your house of relationships, the 7th house where we find partnerships of all kinds, especially business and really important life partners. That could be really, really good friends, but it also could be your intimate partners. So there's definitely something here about realizing issues around relationship, or maybe having some kind of revelation around relationship and your role in that. And it looks like it's quite healing, and in fact quite positive, because we've got Jupiter involved here with the sun across from the moon, which is what makes that full moon. And Chiron is on the sun as well. So there's something that you've learned about yourself, maybe a new way of seeing yourself that's been revelatory, and that helps you then to be a better partner, or to find partners that are more adapted to you, or that you find an easier communication with your partner. So this moon is also ruled by Venus in your 2nd house, which is a lovely place to have Venus. She rules that 2nd house for you, and so you're getting some kind of benefit too, both from this realization and partnerships in general, potentially, but also in terms of your income, and maybe an awareness around new ways of making money, how you organize your finances and your wealth in general. And that, of course, can be something to do with family too. The 2nd house is family. You also have Mercury and the North Node in that 2nd house, along with Uranus, which has been there since the spring of 2018. So that's not new. Lots of change there for you. And now something very new. That Mercury and North Node, or Rahu, which is also called, that's a conjunction that's happening at the time of this full moon, but it's still relevant in the days before and after that. And so there's again something new, potentially with regards to money or your own self-worth, and potentially new ideas or a way of communicating around that. You've got Mars in your 4th house. That's your ruler, Aries. And so Mars in the 4th is going to bring you a lot of energy and activity around family, around home. Potentially, if you're moving or needing to renovate, that's going to give you really good energy. If there is some tension at home, this is going to it'll flare up. It'll be impactful for sure. This is a lot of dynamic cardinal energy in your angular houses, which are kind of akin to your own energy, and so you're feeling super motivated at this time. Maybe it's that you are just understanding something about your emotional needs, or something that has been frustrating you for a long time and needs to be spoken about in terms of your values, with that Mercury there on the North Node in the second house, and especially with regards to this new moon, or rather the full moon that's showing up in your seventh. So think about that. Maybe there's something that you can communicate. These days leading up to that could be something that's already been instigated around the time of the new moon in Aries that happened in your sign at the very beginning of your sign. And that was on the 21st of March. So reflect before jumping to conclusions. Mercury in Taurus can jump to conclusions, especially on Rahu. And so, don't always assume necessarily the worst. I think that Venus there, both in your second and ruling the moon in the seventh, can really support you in terms of what it is that you want going forward. So best wishes for all of this, Aries, and I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, this Libra full moon is happening in your sixth house of health and your daily work and the things that you have to do, the kind of drudgery that you have to do. So maybe there's a realization around how things in your life are showing up and whether they're supporting your health or not. What it is around your work or around your daily obligations that might need to be changed. You have a lot of help in this matter because your ruler is in your first house, and that's really lovely. So you probably feel very dynamic and positive about this. You've got quite a lot going in your first house at the moment. You're also having, of course, Uranus since 2018 going through there. So there's a lot of dynamism within yourself and relationships overall, but this also looks like it's going to be impacted by Mercury, which is conjunct the North Node now at the time of this full moon. And that's going to open up a new way of realizing something or communicating about something that is about yourself and your potential needs, or whatever you might need to say in relationships, perhaps, or with regards to how you need to speak up for yourself as well. That could be a really good use of that energy. You also have this lovely Jupiter-Sun conjunction happening in your 12th house. So while the Sun is conjunct Chiron in the 12th, opposing this moon, making it a full moon, it also is very close to Jupiter, and on the 10th, 11th of April, you've got Jupiter conjunct the Sun, starting a whole new cycle. That 12th house is realizations around aspects of ourselves that were once hidden or in our unconscious process, or it can also be with regards to family lineage, potentially, and also in terms of your overall sense of spiritual life. So this is quite a nice new start in that regard, something of a revitalizing aspect here in the 12th house. This can also be something to do with people from far away. So if you have family or business colleagues who are far away, this can also be a great new start, a realization also around how you might be needing to show up differently. That Chiron on the Sun can show us where we have not been true to ourselves, or where we've potentially even been sabotaging something. That Chiron also can show you, and it has been showing you for already 4 or 5 years now, how it is that you might be doing things in a way that's not to your own best benefit or interest. And so this moon is showing that up in your day-to-day life. Where is it that you yourself might need to be different, show up differently, maybe with more confidence around issues that will lead to a better daily life, and certainly especially better mental and physical health. You've got Pluto that has just moved into your 10th house of career. So big changes, because when the planets, very slow moving planets like that, move into angular houses, they're going to change everything. So that affects you personally, it affects your 4th house of home, and of course it affects your relationships too. So a very big change in terms of your career and social status, or around your ambition. That's a new thing, but it's going to be a slow integration. The first couple of years of that transit will still give you an opportunity to keep reflecting on this area, because Pluto is still moving in and out of that 10th house during 2023 and 2024. You'll find more about that in my Pluto and Aquarius video if you want to know more details. So best wishes for all of this, Taurus, and I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is happening in your fifth house. This full moon is lighting up the house of creativity and self-expression, as well as children, and perhaps something that brings you pleasure. It could be a hobby or a new love. If that's the case, that could be somebody that you met in a social setting, because we've got the Jupiter-Sun conjunction in the house of social groups, friends. Maybe you met somebody through a friend and now you're just kind of noticing what you're feeling about that person. It could also be that you're understanding something about your own children and how that might be impacting your social life, for example. How this is showing up in ways that you might need to make some changes or reflect on what your children might need compared to what you have wanted and your higher goals and aspirations. It looks quite positive all in all, because you do have the support of a really strong Venus, which is ruling this moon in the 12th house, which gives you some really renewed confidence in terms of your spiritual understanding or even unconscious understanding of yourself. It's quite pleasant. Venus in the 12th can make you feel quite happy and secure in that aspect. But if there is a new relationship in your life, and or if there is an ongoing relationship in your life with Venus in the 12th, especially while Mercury is conjunct the North Node in the 12th, you might be, if there is anything that needs to be hidden about this relationship, it might be revealed around this time. And so be careful. If you're doing something that you think you probably shouldn't, then the consequences might be reflected, and that could be coming from you or coming from other people. You might be in for a new way of seeing the person that you might be in love with. And if it's got nothing to do with that, then I would just caution you against any kind of underhanded financial dealings or things that could be in the area of scams or some kind of, somebody taking advantage of you financially. Unfortunately, con men and people who are scamming people are abound these days, especially under the cover of the internet. And so just be careful, because Venus is indeed in the house of loss as well from a material point of view. Feels really good from a psychological point of view or a spiritual point of view, but not great from the material point of view. And especially while Mercury is conjunct that North Node, there can be something underhanded there. So beware of Ponzi schemes, any kind of MLM or other kind of pyramid schemes. They're not all that they're cracked up to be, and that fifth house moon could be showing you what is better in terms of your energy of entrepreneurship, which you do have anyway very strongly. Mars is in your second house. That's also another way of suggesting that there can be losses financially, or there can be challenges around money. So do tread carefully around this, because with Mars in the second, you can be super dynamic and very ambitious around money, or there can be some kind of challenge in that regard. That Mars is also trining Saturn from your 10th house of career. So definitely something new coming in terms of your career and social status, a new responsibility, a new sense of maturity around that. And with Mars trining that, you've got a lot of drive. You've got maybe a new sense of values around what it is that you want to achieve. New feeling of ambitious drive, which is great. Just be careful that you're seeing things really clearly. And that people are showing up in a way that you think that they are. And of course, you too. So best wishes for all of this, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, this Libra full moon is showing up in your fourth house, whether you are the Cancer ascendant, sun, or moon. It's the fourth house from those placements, and especially because the moon is very important for you. It rules you, and especially because the fourth house is the natural home for the moon and Cancer. This feels really nice. It feels really cozy. There's something that you're understanding that is really clear in your awareness around your emotional needs, your psychological needs, what makes you happy and what makes you feel secure. Now, it's not necessarily that that is all immediately available to you, but the realization is definitely there. I have to say, though, I think there is a lot happening in your favor in terms of how you show up in the world. Your social status or your career seem to be going well, and there seems to be some kind of recompense for that, because we've got Jupiter there conjunct this sun, which is opposing the moon, giving us that full moon. And while the sun has just passed over Chiron in Aries for you has been representing a certain need to have a change of identity in how you show up in the world, and maybe overcoming a sense of insecurity around that. And now you do feel more confident with that. The sun having passed that point is kind of a new cycle that is showing up in terms of what personal healing might need to take place, or any kind of issues around self-esteem, self-confidence. They're being really boosted by this sun and then the Jupiter right next to the sun. On the 10th and 11th of April, you have a really nice window of feeling great. Also because the sun is connecting with Jupiter for its annual visit, and that sun is recharging Jupiter in your house of career. And that gives you 1 year of new energy in the house of career, even if Jupiter then moves into the house of the money that you earn from the thing that you do, or friendship as well, and new hopes and dreams from mid-May onwards. We'll talk about that more in another video. But this is a really nice time for you. You also have the ruler of this fourth house moon in the 11th house, which is Venus, in the house of hopes and wishes and dreams, and house of friendships. Looks like lots of support is there for you, both financially and in terms of your friends. She's a very strong Venus because she rules that Taurus 11th house for you. And so also combined with the lovely Jupiter in the 10th, it looks like a good money month for you right now. And also with this Mercury in the 11th house, another signature of friends and some new possibilities in friendship, as Mercury is meeting the North Node. Mercury Rahu tends to indicate something very new in terms of, especially in a money house like the 11th house, new business opportunities, new ideas around how to make money. But also in this case, particularly, it's about friends, new people showing up in your life. Mercury in the 11th, of course, and especially the North Node in the 11th, or Rahu in the 11th, is also about your sense of planning for the future, your sense of planning what it is that you want out of life in a bigger sense. What are your dreams? Maybe some new ideas around that as well. As the North Node has been going through there since the beginning of 2022, definitely your hopes and wishes and dreams have been revised, Cancer. And so this is a good opportunity to seize, to establish that some new ground there in a very uplifting way. You have Mars in the first house, so this gives you a lot of dynamism. That's a lot of cardinal energy in the very important angular houses of your chart. The 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th represent yourself and your home, or your emotional security, and your relationships in the 7th, and of course how you show up in the world in the 10th. And so there's a lot of energy being pumped into you right now, and into those very important angles of the chart. This is also in a very supportive trine to Saturn. Saturn has just moved into your 9th house of your sense of what is possible for you. What is my life purpose? What am I here for? And what do I believe? And so you can use this drive, this bigger sort of sense of opening, as all of these important planets are at the top of your chart right now, and really energizing a sense of possibility and future for you, Cancer. So enjoy this new dynamic and these new realizations around your personal needs and how you can confidently show up. That Mars in the first house is confidence, and it's ruling your 10th house of how you show up in the world. And so enjoy it and use it for what it's worth, Cancer, and I'll see you in the next video. Leo, this is for your ascendant sun or moon sign. And for Leo especially, we're always interested in what's going on between the sun and the moon, because of course the sun rules you, and the sun is in the 9th house opposing this moon in the 3rd house, which gives us this full moon in your 3rd house of courage and willpower, drive for communication and connection with people all around you. If you're a business person, then this is fantastic. It's giving you some realizations around business at a time when you have Jupiter in the lucky 9th house. So that could be really fortunate for you. It looks like you've come through some healing understanding as well, personally, Leo, because you've just had the sun meet up. Annually, it meets up with Chiron, and it just happened just before this full moon. And so there's some new realization around yourself. As you might understand, some new framework, some new frame of reference for what you're here for. What is my life about? And Chiron may have had you confused or doubting your capacities. And now, yes, because even Leo has doubts at times about themselves. And so that Chiron on the sun, having just moved through that transit with the sun over Chiron now, moving towards a very fortunate transit to Jupiter, it's going to show you a whole new way of seeing yourself, a whole new way of seeing the purpose and drive of your life. This is higher awareness as well with Jupiter there. It's a really beautiful aspect for wisdom and understanding something more impactful in life, how to operate from maybe a higher perspective or a new philosophy that's more supportive of you. The sun will meet up with that Jupiter. So your ruler, the sun, is going to meet up with Jupiter on the 10th, 11th of April. And that's very significant for you because that's a new cycle of Jupiter in that ninth house for you. So your sun connects with Jupiter annually, but in a different house each time. So the ninth house is really favorable. Put your thoughts as high as possible for the greatest good possible, and you'll find that that's where you get success. But the action is where we find the moon in the third house, where you realize, okay, this and this needs to be done so I can achieve that goal. You also have great support because the moon is ruled by Venus, which is currently in really great dignity in your 10th house because she rules your 10th house of Taurus. Venus in the 10th is really great for any kind of business or career or even personal relationships. And so I think you can certainly take a lot of comfort from that. It'll feel really nice. So the way that you show up at work or the way that you show up in the world just feels more constructive, more pleasant. And then that's given a boost also because you've got Mercury aligning almost exactly with the North Node around the time of this full moon. And that Mercury North Node conjunction, which is in fact just hours after the full moon, is going to give you some new realizations around your social status or around work. That could have a lot of busyness as well in terms of career, but this will definitely have a big impact on you because this could also affect where you want to live, for example, or the way that work affects you personally. You might start to realize something about that. Given that Pluto has just moved into your house of relationships, you're on a really long road for personal transformation, Leo. So this shift with Leo going into your 7th is going to transform you in a really, really big way. You won't certainly feel the same even after these next couple of years as Pluto goes in and out of the 7th. You'll have lots of new insights around how you want to be, how you want to show up in relationships. Let the dust settle. Don't worry about how things are going to look 20 years from now. Go through this next 2 years and pick up the energies and the changes that are being called to you right now with Pluto just now going into your 7th. Certainly don't fear this. It will absolutely transform you and absolutely transform where you live, how you show up at work, your business partners, your life partners. And ultimately, the more that you allow this transformation, the better it will be for you. Don't cling on to anything. The only people who fear these transits are those who want everything to remain the same or have an unrealistic, idealized version of their life and are not willing to just live life day to day. So be that person who's open to day-to-day exploration, day-to-day transformation, and you'll be incredibly powerful, Leo. With Mars in your 12th, just for the next few weeks, you might find yourself a little edgy. You might find yourself a little disturbed in terms of your under your unconscious processes or feeling impatient. Don't be too impatient to make big changes all at once because that can actually backfire on you. These are processes that will bring insight, but not necessarily the material change that you're looking for right away. And as Saturn is also going into your 8th house at the same time, trining that 12th house Mars, it looks like there's something that needs to be resolved in terms of how you receive money from others, your shared resources, or even potentially around your greatest fears in life. And maybe Mars is poking at that right now. Find that Leo courage, find it in your heart every day. Don't make mountains out of molehills, and you'll find that you come out really, really strong, Leo. Make all the best of this really lovely full moon in your third house, and I'll see you in the next video. Virgo, this Libra full moon is happening in your second house, especially from the ascendant, but also from the sun and moon. And this is a lot to do with family. It's around issues of self-worth as well, your personal value, and the things that you value as well. And that, of course, can include your income, the money that you earn. Now, as Venus rules that second house, we want to find out what Venus is doing. And she's in the very lucky ninth house. And so Venus is up in Taurus in her own sign, in good dignity. So Venus rules both Libra and Taurus. So she rules your second and your ninth house. And this is really supportive energy for you. Lots and lots of inspiration with Venus in the ninth house. A real sense of refreshment in terms of your sense of purpose as well, because you've got Mercury, your personal ruler, is conjunct the North Node in that ninth house. The North Node has been in the ninth along with Uranus, which has been transforming your sense of purpose and what it is that you'd like to do and how you see the world, a bigger perspective of the world. The Uranus has been there already almost 5 years. The North Node has been there over a year, so since the beginning of 2022. With Mercury there, now there might be some thoughts turning to how it is that you want to see yourself, what it is that you conceive now that might be new and different, something insightful. It can be something that kind of comes out of the blue and brings a new idea to you in terms of how you want to show up in your life, how you, what your personal goals are, what your sense of purpose is in this life, or what you could describe as your higher meaning to life. And that can also be as mundane as issues around studies or new educational opportunities, which is not at all to diminish that. It's very important for you because that's something that you treasure, is knowledge and learning. In the house of knowledge and learning, lots of new and really uplifting energy there. So at the same time, you also have a lovely combination of Jupiter with the Sun. The Sun has only just crossed over Chiron, and that's that Sun-Jupiter Chiron opposition to this full moon that actually makes it a full moon. And so there's another bit of information for you in terms of good fortune and perhaps a sense of better confidence around shared resources or around how you show up in relationships of intimacy, for example. That could have been a healing moment, especially just before this full moon on the first week of April, and perhaps also a better understanding of your role in those areas in terms of shared resources, how you receive money, how you value money and other people's resources, and then also your own desires, because that eighth house is also the house of sexuality and intimacy with others, but also a house where we can find some deeper unconscious processes. So this is looking really favorable. It looks like a really nice boost at a time when Saturn has just moved in across from your ascendant or sun or moon. And so Saturn in the seventh house is going to reestablish relationships, reestablish a whole new connection between you and a life partner or you and a business partner, or bring new ones in and realign them in a way that is more constructive, very long lasting as well. So when Saturn goes through the house of relationships, it will do the housekeeping necessary to remove the ones that are no longer helpful and bring in people who are of much more value over the long term. And equally, you might find people leaving your life in the same way. It's not like we are never the problem and others are. It can work in the opposite way too. And so Mars is trining this energy from the 11th house. And Mars in the 11th can be that you also are realizing who is my friend and who's not my friend, and maybe having to do the housekeeping there as well, or with regards to setting up new goals, and then those new goals and the new sense of drive, perhaps also around money that you earn from things that you do. That's something that can bring you a whole new motivation as well. So lots and lots happening here, Virgo. I think really constructive for you at this Libra full moon, and I will see you in the next video. Hey Libra, this is your full moon. You get one a year, usually, sometimes twice. This year it's only one, and that's of course happening in your house of self. And so you're having some realizations around yourself in roles of relationship and with other people, how things are happening in your house of relationship, which could also involve professional partnerships, people that you consult with, and so on. But this is really lovely. You've got Venus also, your ruler, ruling this moon in your house of other people's money. So there could be some benefit that you're finding. And since Jupiter is also in your seventh house of relationship, if you have, for example, a business partner or a life partner, that person might be experiencing some real abundance at this moment that you benefit from. You certainly are benefiting right now from being in partnership. You're definitely going to benefit, as most Libras do, benefit from partnerships, but in a very material way. You also have Mercury, which is conjunct a North Node in that eighth house. And so new realizations about potential pitfalls or things that you might be afraid of, things that are hidden fears or things that may have been tripping you up in terms of money, taxes, or things of value with regards to inheritances or money in the form of loans or banking deals. Hope you haven't been caught up in this horrible all these bank collapses. But nonetheless, this is something new. It does look very positive. So it does look like there's something here that you will bring you real success or bring you good fortune. And with Jupiter soon moving into that eighth house, that can also really bring you some great benefits. So hang in there if things are rough just at the moment, because there seems to be a lot of really good energy coming down the pipeline for you in terms of money. Mars is in your 10th house of career, so I think this also has a lot to do with your ambitions and your drive, maybe a renewed sense of dynamism in career or around your social ambitions. Maybe there's a new sense of energy with regards to how it is that you want to show up in the world. And this is a very powerful period of time for you because these are cardinal energies. You are a cardinal sign. And so the first house of self, the fourth house of home, and the seventh house of relationships, and the 10th house of your career or your vocation or your social status are being strongly impacted right now, and in a very dynamic way that can really bring you some success. The ruler of your fourth, Saturn, is really good for you, and that's moving into your sixth house. It's going to put some order in terms of your everyday life, how you show up at work or what you do. That might be connected to that Mars in the 10th and what it is that you're ambitious for, or what it is that might need resolving in the house of career. That could also have something to do with potentially some kind of challenges around higher ups, bosses, and people like that. With Mars currently trining that Saturn in the sixth house, I think you're going to find some kind of willpower to muscle your way through that. And certainly with Jupiter in the seventh, I think you'll find that you've got the right people on your side for success. So good luck with all of that, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. For Scorpio ascendant or sun or moon signs, this is showing up in your 12th house, and the Libra full moon is going to highlight areas that might have you realize things around your own unconscious process or your sense of dreams hidden from you, things that had not been in your awareness that actually were affecting you either emotionally or in terms of your performance. And that can be for anything from mental health or how you've been feeling around things, how you've been feeling about your potentially your physical health as well, what your everyday life is doing to your overall sense of well-being, and also what your unconscious process might be doing that may not be helping your everyday life. So there's something here that definitely describes an issue around health for you that could also find some great resolution, because you've got Jupiter passing through that house of health already for several months now. And soon it will conjunct the sun as the sun approaches on the 10th and the 11th exactly. You're going to find all that period of time after this full moon and for those days leading up to the 11th, 12th, there's going to be some real assistance if there is any need for that in your everyday life in terms of your health or your organization around things, or in terms of a feeling of maybe being overwhelmed every day, and finding that now comes to a point of resolution for you. This is a really lovely supportive energy. You're getting support from people in your life because you've got Venus in good dignity in the sign she rules, Taurus, which is right across from you in the seventh house of partnerships. Think of the first house, seventh house axis as the person sitting across from you at the table, and you've got Venus right there sitting across from you at the table. So not only does that make you feel good, but you have nice feeling people around you as well. This can be inspiring in relationship, but it also can just bring the right people into your life at a time when you want that extra boost. You've got Uranus going through that house for a very long time already, so your relationships have been really radically transformed since the spring of 2018. And at the same time, you've got the North Node moving through there since the beginning of January 2022. Now the North Node is approaching, well, actually, I guess it's Mercury approaching the North Node to be more exact, but they're both approaching each other, almost colliding at the time of this full moon. And that suggests that there's some new revelation around relationships, around partnerships of all kinds, especially if it's a business partnership. This will show up in terms of your commercial aspects or new realizations around that, because Mercury and Venus is all about money. And of course, the North Node in the sign of Taurus is also with regards to money and values and what makes you feel secure. This is also being impacted by Pluto having just moved into your fourth house of home and what makes you feel secure, and your sense of family, or your sense of whatever makes you feel happy. And with Pluto going through there, just now entering for the very first time and going to go back and forth for 2023 and 2024 between your third and fourth houses, you're definitely going to be in for a big change in terms of what it is that gives you a sense of stability and grounding, and potentially also with whom. And so perhaps this realization with the Mercury North Node is going to already give you a glimpse of that. You've got Mars in the lucky fifth house in a trine, sorry, Mars in the lucky ninth house in a trine to Saturn in the lucky fifth house. And this is something that can bring a lot of dynamism in terms of what it is that you want out of life. It can be a new sense of higher goals or a long-term perspective for life, what it is that you want to achieve. With Saturn going through the fifth, it could be something to do with children. I will direct you now to the Saturn in Pisces video because you'll get a lot more detail there, but just to say that there's now some dynamic connection between your sense of purpose, your sense of what is important in life, and the fifth house of your children or creativity, love affairs even, and also a sense of entrepreneurship, if that's also something that you're engaging with. So definitely a really dynamic energy, because you do have quite a lot of supportive energy in the places where you want it, which is in relationships and in the everyday life. And so look to your friends, look for a new dynamic way of seeing yourself and your role in life, and you'll find the answers in your deepest heart of hearts, where the moon is in the 12th house, showing you something about your hidden desires and what is going on in your unconscious process. So all the best, dear Scorpio, and I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, ascendant or sun or moon sign, you're having this lovely Libra full moon in your 11th house. This is a nice place to have a full moon because it brings you a lot of optimism, a realization around your hopes and dreams. It's also a money house, so why not? Maybe you're going to have some awareness around how to earn more money from the thing that you do, especially if you are an entrepreneur. This is especially helpful because you've got Jupiter moving through that fifth house of creativity and entrepreneurship. It also represents children, and that is where the moon is being opposed by the sun. And so we've got the sun right there now, almost connecting with Jupiter, your ruler, in the fifth house. Really inspiring stuff here for you, Sagittarius, because that's trining you personally, really supportive. Chiron and the sun have just connected at the time of this full moon. And so you've just now understood something. You've either had some realization around yourself as a creative being, or around yourself in love affairs, in general, in love, in your capacity to love, and also with regards to children. And so maybe there's been some real benefit in terms of healing energy, or something that you're becoming more and more aware of in terms of the life of your children. When your ruler meets up with the sun for the annual meeting, this time in Aries, that will be around the 10th, 11th of April. But on either side of that, give it a couple of days, and you're going to find that there's a real sense of new start, a new beginning here. This is just in time for the eclipse that's coming in, also in this particular part of your chart, also with a connection to your ruler Jupiter. So hang on for that. I'm going to come out with another video to describe more of what's going to go on there. But suffice it to say that you want to really be aware of what possibilities are out there for you now. Keep your lovely sense of optimism, and really be keen about what goals you're aspiring to. What is it that you want? What is the big dream? That can also include friends and how people show up for you in your life. You probably have a good grasp of that already, but nonetheless, at this time, you've got a new awareness, because Mars has just spent 7 months, let's face it, in your house of relationships. And so I'd say by now you figured out who your friends are and who they aren't. And so now, just before this full moon, we've got Mars moving into your 8th house. And that can show up some potential challenges around money that you share with other people. That Mars is in a trine to the 4th house of what makes you feel secure and happy. And so there might be some connection with where you live, with whom you live, what it is that needs to change in terms of your foundations in life. But for more details on that, I have a video both on Mars in Cancer as well as on Saturn in Pisces, so you can look for that. So a lot of big change also in your everyday life, Libra, because this moon is ruled by a Venus in your 6th house. Looks really nice, positive energy for the 6th house. It can be new realizations as well. We've got Venus, sorry, not Venus, we've got Mercury that is conjunct the North Node in that 6th house. And it's giving you a new impetus in terms of what it is that you need to do, how it is that you need to get organized, potentially also around your health. If there is any health issue, this can be a time to really get good help around that. And certainly once Jupiter moves through there, that can also be helpful for you. But the trick is right now with the North Node to become aware and potentially also communicate about that. So with Mercury there can be a new role for you in your everyday life, or a new awareness around how you need to change things in your everyday life to make that work better for your health, or to make that work better just in terms of your overall sense of well-being. So best wishes for all of this. I think it looks like a really nice cycle for you, and lots of positive developments around your work and daily life. So enjoy that, Sagittarius, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is happening in your 10th house. This is very familiar energy to you. Having a Libra full moon here is really lovely. It shows you something of your work situation and what feels really familiar to you, responsibility in the world. And that is really positively highlighted by your home and family life and the household, because the sun in opposition to this full moon, what creates the full moon, is in your 4th house. It's just had a connection with Chiron, which is showing you something about a lesson that you might have needed to learn around what you need to feel secure, or what your home life requires of you. And especially with Jupiter there, it looks like it's been really, really beneficial. So you've had a few months now with Jupiter going through there. In the next few days after this full moon, you're going to have the sun moving into Jupiter for the annual conjunction, this time happening in your 4th house in Aries. And so that this energy of new starts is once again there. Very busy 4th house for you this April, because the eclipses are also, or at least the 20th of April eclipse is happening also there for you. And I really see this as something that's teaching you a little bit about this work-life balance. So it's like a new awareness around your social obligations or your career obligations, and how that impacts your home and family, but more importantly, your own happiness and your deeper psychological security. That positive Jupiterian energy surely has helped you a lot in that regard with family and relationships. But Mars in the seventh house right now, meaning opposite you. So the seventh house is the person sitting in front of you. Now you've got Mars sitting in front of you in the sign of Cancer. That could have some need for adjustment or a need for some, let's call them discussions, conversations with partners in life or business partners that need to sort themselves out, partly because we've got this very strong cardinal energy going between that 10th house of social obligations and career, as well as that fourth house. This could have something to do with that. And so maybe something needs to be reorganized, let's say, in the house of relationships or business partnerships. It could be coming from others as well, that they're challenging you, and that is putting tension on that home life or the work life balance. Nonetheless, your ruler is now out of the second house and in the third house. So it looks like restrictions that you may have felt in terms of your own self-worth or even around your financial self-worth, God forbid, Capricorn, that can now be feeling a little bit lighter for you. Something big is happening there because Pluto has just moved in there. I'll direct you now to those videos around Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn in Pisces, and even Mars in Cancer, where you'll get more details about all of these different things. But suffice it to say now that whatever's now being where you're asked to be sort of stepping up in your third house, which could involve your neighborhood or it can involve business dealings, commerce, and so on, is being affected by that Mars in the seventh house by trine. Very supportive, by the way, lots of new ambitions there, but there's a lot of tie-ins in your life. This looks like something new for business. If that's the case for you, this could be, for example, Saturn in the third, developing new skills, new business skills, or new relationships around your immediate neighborhood or the everyday life, that in the way that you show up, including the way that you communicate. And so that Mars North Node in the fifth house of creativity and self-expression is feeding back into that Saturn. And so there might be something there that you feel more confidently about saying. And so it will bring you some kind of long-term benefit. You may not see the benefit right away, but this all looks really quite good for you, Capricorn. And so your ruler is a little bit more chill these days, so hopefully you are too. And make the most of that as well while Saturn moves through Pisces for you, Capricorn. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, you're going to have this full moon happening in your ninth house, which is a really lucky house. It's a beautiful, expansive energy. So there's some realizations perhaps around your higher goals or purpose in life. It'll give you a kind of a sense of practical support coming from the sun in opposition to that ninth house. The sun is also with wonderful Jupiter, giving you a lot of inspiration in your everyday life and in terms of practical ways to ground that new aspiration or this new sense of goals or higher purpose in your life. This could be also something really fortunate around siblings, or it could be a healing with siblings because Chiron has been on this sun in your third house. And that can be a simple realization around how you communicate your needs, how you communicate in terms of business as well, commerce, all of those third house issues, which are the sort of the grunt work of business, let's say, or the exchanges in life, which look like they've had quite a lot of support at the moment. So you can take out that talent of the everyday practical knowledge and put it up there in the ninth house. That can also turn you into some sort of a teacher or a counselor of some kind, a mediator of some kind, helping people understand something of themselves. And you've understood that yourself through your own process. So really beneficial energy, and not a minute too soon, because you've got Pluto coming into your first house, transforming everything. It's changing everything. It's changing you first and foremost, and then of course your relationships in the seventh house, and of course the home and the career aspects of your chart are going to be affected as well by square. I don't want to dwell on that too much, except to say that everything is going to be transformed in your life. Don't take a 20-year chunk of this, take it one day at a time. The first house transformation that Pluto is about to give you has been survived by your Capricorn friends. Ask them for some advice, ask them for a sense of what's coming ahead, and also recognizing that you're here for some kind of renewal. You know, that you signed up for this on some level. You're here for a personal renewal. And of course, in all of those cardinal, very important areas of your life, those very foundational areas of your life, you're going to be seeing yourself in a very, very different way. You've got a couple of years of a practice run here as Pluto is moving back and forth from your 12th to your first house. So take the energy of the 12th house, understanding your unconscious process, understanding your spiritual needs and values as well, and perhaps even ancestral wisdom, and take it into the first house each time Pluto goes there so that you can take support with you as you transform. You have Saturn that has just moved out of your first house, so you can also breathe a sigh of relief there because that feels a lot less heavy. Saturn in the second house will be restructuring your responsibility around money, around your income potentially, and even around your family. That can have something to do with your self-worth. If you are feeling challenged in terms of your self-worth, then keep reminding yourself to take that 12th house spiritual understanding of who am I. In this particular instance, take that 9th house moon energy, beautifully ruled by Venus, which is currently in your 4th house, making you feel good, giving you a sense of positivity and upliftment in your emotional and your psychological framework, and use that to give you that courage and the energy. That second house, Saturn, is also ruled by Jupiter, currently in your third, that I just described in a really beneficial way. Is going to give you an upliftment in terms of really practical solutions to what is going on right now. Use that for everything you've got, because you're going to have that Jupiter moving into the 4th house and bringing all that positivity into what makes you happy, what makes you feel secure. And so you want to establish something pragmatic that you can really lean on while Jupiter's going through that 4th house starting mid-May. And perhaps with the Mercury North Node conjunction that we've got now at this Libra full moon, also in your 4th house, you'll have a new realization around what that is. What do I need to make me feel happy? How do I need to communicate that? And also, you know, how do I feel about my home and my physical home, as well as my sense of home and where I live? And maybe that needs some renovation as well. So good luck with this, Aquarius. Enjoy this transiting full moon in your 9th house. Let it show you the highest goals and the highest realizations of what you're here for. And I'll speak to you in the next video. Pisces, and this is for Pisces rising or sun or moon signs. This is happening in your 8th house. And so this full moon is highlighting something around all possibilities of transformation, deeper psychological transformation, and also all of the things that we don't necessarily see in life. And those are the hidden aspects, perhaps occult aspects of things like what we're doing here with the astrology or tarot or any other kind of mystical practices that can actually be deep spiritual mysticism, tantra, for example, all these kinds of things. And especially as Pluto has just moved into your 12th house, fantastic to get deeper into all of that, because Pluto in the 12th can really help you engage on the level of shamanism or working with ancestral healing, working with your unconscious process, working also with foreigners and foreign lands, things that are far away from you, and in a way that's going to be deeply transformational. You also have Saturn has just moved into your first house as well. And so you personally are ready for some kind of upgrade in terms of taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your well-being. And then to look at where your ruler is right now, remembering that Jupiter rules Pisces in the traditional rulership. Jupiter is right next to that sun, which is opposing this Libra full moon, creating the full moon indeed. And that Jupiter is really uplifting you from the second house of your values, your sense of self-worth, which has got a real great boost in the last few months as Jupiter's been going through there. And equally, you've just done some kind of healing recently with the Sun and Chiron having conjunct each other really over the last couple of weeks. It's not just a single day event, although it perfects on a single day, but it really has been a process that you've been under since the end of February. And Jupiter has been supporting you every step of the way. So there's a really lovely energy for Pisces right now. Jupiter is in a really strong position if you are looking to earn more money. With Libra ruled by Venus in the 8th house, this can also be that you're finding new resources coming from other people, even if it's just moral support coming from other people. That's really welcome. And then, of course, you have Venus, the ruler of that full moon, in the 3rd house of business. If you're in business for yourself, this is a great indicator of more business success as well. More fluid communications as well with the people in your everyday life. That can include neighbors and cousins and siblings, or just in general, a sense of more fluid communication. You also have the North Node conjunct Mercury, also in the 3rd house. Again, once if you are in business for yourself, really helpful for new starts in terms of business ideas or business, practical business stuff. This is a very practical house with the North Node moving through this 3rd house for you since the beginning of January 2022. You've probably had to sharpen some practical skills and done that really well. Well done, Pisces. Because you've got this Venus there, you're definitely getting a lot of support exactly right now. And that Mercury energy is also in a sextile to Mars in your 5th, and also sextiling Saturn in your 1st, and that Saturn is also sextiling the Mars in your 5th. So just doubles down what I'm saying. If you are in business for yourself, working for yourself, working in some kind of creative enterprise, this will really, really support you. 3rd house, of course, is also a creative house. It's the creative arts of all kinds, the performance arts, you could call that as well, and the skills that are required to do that. And with Jupiter in the 2nd house, that's adding to that talent and skill. So lots and lots to draw on here, Pisces. And so really enjoy this quite uplifting period, a great healing around a sense of what is possible for you, particularly in regards to your self-sufficiency. So all really, really nice, Pisces, and I'll see you in the next video.